I woke up in a VIP hospital room after suddenly collapsing during dinner. Behind the half-open door, I heard my mother-in-law whisper, "Are you sure she took it?" My sister-in-law let out a quiet laugh. "Relax. By tomorrow morning, everything will be ours." My blood ran cold. I picked up my phone and texted my attorney, "Execute the plan." Now, the fluorescent lights above my bed hummed with a sterile, indifferent buzz that seemed to mock the chaos erupting inside my skull. My head pounded with a dull, persistent ache that throbbed in rhythm with my heartbeat, and my tongue felt like sandpaper against the roof of my mouth. The crisp white sheets were tucked too tightly around my body, trapping me in a cocoon of clinical efficiency that smelled of antiseptic and faintly of wilted flowers that had been placed on the nightstand by someone who probably didn't even care if I lived or died. I blinked slowly, trying to piece together the fractured memories of the evening before. The clinking of fine crystal, the warm glow of the chandelier in my mother-in-law's dining room, the perfectly roasted lamb that tasted just a little bit off, with a strange metallic aftertaste that I had dismissed as an overly aggressive seasoning, and then nothing. Just a void of blackness that had swallowed me whole and spit me out into this cold, impersonal room. The room was lavish for a hospital, with a flat-screen television mounted on the wall that was currently displaying a muted morning news program, a leather recliner for visitors that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and an actual window that offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline rather than a brick wall or a parking structure. VIP, the nurses had called it when I was wheeled in on a gurney, my body limp and unresponsive. My husband, Daniel, had insisted on the best care. At least, that's what I had assumed in my groggy, disoriented state. Now, as I lay there with my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, I realized that the best care might have been the last thing on anyone's mind. The best care might have been a convenient cover for something far more sinister. The voices from the hallway were unmistakable. Eleanor, my mother-in-law, with her clipped, aristocratic tones that always sounded like she was addressing a servant who had failed to properly polish the silverware. Her voice carried an air of entitlement that had been cultivated over decades of inherited wealth and social climbing. And Vanessa, my sister-in-law, whose sugary sweet voice had a way of curdling the moment she thought no one was listening, like milk left out in the summer heat. Their words sliced through the haze of my confusion like a scalpel, precise and devastating. "Are you sure she took it?" Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper, but the hospital hallway was silent enough that every syllable carried through the gap in the door. I could picture her perfectly. Her perfectly coiffed silver hair, her designer suit that probably cost more than my first car, her hawk-like eyes that missed nothing, a soft, breathy laugh from Vanessa. "Relax, mother." I watched her drink every last drop. She was out cold before her fork hit the plate. "By tomorrow morning, everything will be ours." I felt my fingers curl into the sheets, gripping the fabric so tightly that my knuckles turned white and my nails threatened to tear through the cotton. The fog in my brain began to lift, replaced by a surge of adrenaline so potent that it made my vision sharpen and my senses heighten to an almost unbearable degree. "Everything will be ours." The phrase echoed in my mind like a curse, bouncing off the walls of my skull. My money, my inheritance, my life's work, everything I had built from the ground up with my own two hands, all the years of grinding and sacrificing and clawing my way to the top of a male-dominated industry that had tried to crush me at every turn. And they thought they could just take it. They thought they could poison me and walk away with everything I owned, as if I had simply been a convenient stepping stone on their path to even greater wealth. My phone was on the bedside table. A sleek black device that represented the only lifeline I had in this waking nightmare. I reached for it slowly, every movement deliberate, careful not to make a sound that might alert them to my consciousness. My fingers brushed against the cold glass screen, and I pulled it toward me, tucking it beneath the blanket where it would be hidden from view. The screen lit up with a soft glow, and I squinted against the brightness as I navigated to my attorney's contact. Harrison Ford. Not the actor, but a shark of a lawyer who had been with me since I was a nobody with nothing but a dream and a business plan scribbled on a napkin. He had believed in me when no one else did, and he had helped me build an empire that was now worth more than I could have ever imagined. I typed the message with trembling thumbs, each letter a declaration of war. Execute the plan. Now, I pressed send and watched the message disappear into the digital ether, a missile aimed straight at the foundation of my mother-in-law's carefully constructed scheme. The plan, the one I had put in place the moment I realized that my marriage to Daniel had come with a family of vultures attached, circling overhead and waiting for the right moment to descend. The one I had prayed I would never have to use. The one I had hoped was just a paranoid precaution born from reading too many crime novels. But here I was, flat on my back in a hospital bed, the taste of poison still lingering in my throat like a bitter accusation, and I had never been more certain of anything in my entire life. I was done being the victim. I was done being the naive wife who trusted too easily. From this moment forward, I was going to be the one in control. The voices in the hallway faded as Eleanor and Vanessa walked away, their heels clicking against the linoleum floor in a syncopated rhythm that sounded like a countdown to my doom. I closed my eyes and took a deep, steadying breath, forcing my racing heart to slow down. I could not afford to panic. I could not afford to scream or cry or give them any indication that I was awake and aware of their treachery. I needed to play dead until my attorney could move the pieces into place. I needed to be patient, to bide my time, to wait for the perfect moment to strike back. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time had lost all meaning in that sterile room, where the only markers were the slow drip of the floor and the distant sounds of hospital life filtering through the walls. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body still fighting off whatever drug they had slipped into my wine. The door creaked open at some point, and I heard the soft footsteps of a nurse. She checked my vitals, adjusted my floor, and murmured something about me being a lucky woman. Lucky? I almost laughed out loud. If she only knew the truth, if she only understood that the people who were supposed to love me had just tried to end my life for the sake of money. By the time the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold outside my window, I had formulated a complete and detailed plan of action. It was not a plan of revenge in the petty, vindictive sense that Eleanor and Vanessa would have understood. It was a plan of justice, of restoration, of ensuring that they would never, ever be able to harm another soul, that they would face the full consequences of their actions. I had the documents, I had the proof, and now, I had the momentum and the righteous fury to see it through to the end. The door burst open at exactly 7 in the morning. Eleanor swept into the room like a general surveying a conquered territory, her designer silk blouse immaculate and her pearl necklace gleaming like a noose around her neck. Behind her came Vanessa, her face a mask of practiced concern that did not quite reach her calculating, predatory eyes. They were both carrying bouquets of expensive flowers, as if that would somehow erase the conversation I had overheard, as if a few stems of roses could compensate for attempted murder. "Darling?" Eleanor exclaimed, rushing to my bedside with theatrical urgency that would have won her an Oscar. "You're awake! Thank heavens! We were so worried about you. The doctors said it was some kind of severe allergic reaction. They said you might have been exposed to something at dinner." I watched her performance with a cold, detached fascination, like a scientist studying a particularly venomous species of snake. Her eyes scanned my face, searching for any sign that I remembered what had happened, any flicker of accusation or suspicion. I gave her nothing, just a blank, slightly confused expression that I had perfected over years of dealing with difficult clients and business rivals. "Allergic reaction?" I repeated, my voice hoarse and weak. "That's strange. I've never been allergic to anything in my life." Vanessa stepped forward, her smile bright and brittle as glass. "It must have been something you ate earlier in the day. These things can be so unpredictable. The important thing is that you're okay." Daniel has been beside himself with worry. He's downstairs in the cafeteria getting some coffee. Daniel, my husband, the man who had promised to love and cherish me, to stand by me through sickness and health, the man who had, apparently, stood by while his mother and sister plotted to steal my fortune and possibly end my life. I felt a pang of something that might have been grief, but I shoved it down deep where it couldn't hurt me. I would deal with Daniel later. Right now, I needed to focus on the vipers in front of me. Thank you for coming, I said, my tone flat and emotionless. I appreciate the flowers. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively as if my gratitude was irrelevant. Nonsense. Your family. We take care of our own. She paused, and I saw a flicker of calculation in her eyes, the gears turning behind her carefully composed expression. Speaking of which, I was thinking that perhaps it's time we reviewed some of your financial documents. Daniel mentioned that you have a lot of accounts scattered around. It might be wise to consolidate them, for simplicity's sake. You know, in case something like this happens again. There it was. The opening salvo. The first move in their chess game of greed. I almost smiled, but I caught myself just in time. They had no idea what they were walking into. I had spent years building my empire from absolutely nothing. A small tech startup that I had founded in my tiny studio apartment, fueled by ramen noodles and sheer determination. I had grown it into a multi-million-dollar corporation, and along the way, I had learned a thing or two about protecting my assets, about creating layers of security that would make it virtually impossible for anyone to access my wealth without my explicit consent, and about anticipating betrayal from the people closest to me. I appreciate the concern, Eleanor, I said, my voice soft and weak, playing the part of the grateful invalid. But I think the doctors want me to rest for now. Maybe we can discuss all of that when I get home. Vanessa's smile tightened at the edges, a subtle crack in her facade. Of course. You just focus on getting better. We'll be here to support you every step of the way. They stayed for another 20 minutes, making empty small talk and offering hollow reassurances. I played my part perfectly, the grateful, slightly dazed daughter-in-law who had no idea that her family was circling like sharks in bloody water. When they finally left, I allowed myself a small, triumphant smile. The game was on, and I had already made my first move. My attorney called me at noon. I had managed to get a private moment by pretending to need to use the restroom. I locked myself in the bathroom, sat on the closed toilet lid, and pressed the phone to my ear, my heart pounding with anticipation and barely contained rage. The plan is in motion, Harrison said, his voice calm and professional as always. I've filed the paperwork. The accounts are frozen, and I've sent the evidence package to the authorities. It's going to take a few days for everything to process, but the foundation is laid. They won't be able to touch a single cent. Thank you, Harrison. I knew I could count on you. There's something else, he said, his tone shifting slightly, a note of hesitation creeping in. Daniel's name is on some of the documents. Are you sure about this? Once we move forward, there's no going back. I closed my eyes and leaned against the cold tile wall, feeling the chill seep through my hospital gown. Daniel, my husband, the man I had loved with my whole heart, the man I had trusted with my life, the man who had held my hand when I was diagnosed with cancer, who had stayed by my side through the darkest moments of my life, and the man who had let his family try to destroy me. I had seen the look in his eyes the night before, the slight hesitation when Eleanor had handed me my wine glass, the way he had avoided my gaze, staring at his plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. He had known. Maybe he had even been involved in the planning. The thought made my stomach churn with a mixture of betrayal and disgust. I'm sure, I said, my voice firm and unwavering. He made his choice. Now he has to live with the consequences. The next few days were a blur of hospital food and sleepless nights. I was discharged on Wednesday, with a clean bill of health and a burning desire to confront my family and demand answers. Daniel picked me up from the hospital, his face a mask of concern that I no longer trusted for a single second. He helped me into the car and drove me home in silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his jaw tight with unspoken words. "Are you okay?" he asked finally, as we pulled into the driveway of our sprawling estate. "You've been quiet." "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired. It's been a long few days." We walked into the house together, and I felt a sense of unease settle over me like a heavy blanket. The home that had once been my sanctuary now felt like a trap, every corner hiding a potential threat. I could see the paintings on the walls that I had chosen, the furniture that I had picked out, the life that I had built with my own hands. And I could see the way Daniel was looking at me, as if he were trying to gauge my mood, trying to figure out how much I knew. "Daniel," I said, as we reached the living room, "I need to ask you something. And I need you to be completely honest with me." "Of course, sweetheart. Anything." "You know I would never lie to you, did you know? When your mother and sister gave me that wine, did you know what they were planning?" His face strained of color, going from pale to ashen in the span of a heartbeat. His mouth opened, but no words came out, just a strangled sound like a dying animal. And in that moment, I had my answer. It was written all over his guilty expression, in the way his hands began to tremble and the way his eyes darted away from mine, unable to meet my gaze. "Taylor." "I don't," I said, holding up my hand to stop him. "Don't lie to me. Not now. Not after everything. I heard them in the hospital. I know everything. I know about the plan. I know about the poison. I know that you stood by and let them try to kill me." He collapsed onto the sofa, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. They said it was just a mild sedative. They said they just wanted to buy some time to get the documents signed. They said they wouldn't hurt you." "I didn't think they would actually documents," I repeated, my voice dripping with disdain and disgust. "You mean the documents that would have transferred everything I own to your mother? Everything I've worked for my entire life. You were going to let them steal everything from me." "It wasn't like that. I thought I don't know what I thought. I just wanted to make them happy. They've always been so difficult, and you were so busy with your company, and I felt like I was losing everyone. I felt like I was caught in the middle." I stared at him, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a vast empty chasm where my love for him used to live, a hollow space that could never be filled again. He had chosen them over me. He had chosen their greed over our marriage, over our vows. And now, he would have to live with the consequences of that choice. "I'm going to stay at a hotel tonight," I said, my voice cold and detached. "We'll talk more later, but right now, I need space. I need to think." He didn't try to stop me as I walked out the door. He didn't call my name or beg me to stay. He just sat there on the sofa, a broken man who had lost everything, and I felt absolutely nothing for him. The next morning, I received a call from Vanessa. Her voice was frantic, stripped of all its usual saccharine sweetness, replaced by raw panic. "Taylor, what have you done? Our accounts are frozen. The bank won't let us access anything. And the police are here. They're asking questions. They're talking about attempted murder." I smiled into the phone, a cold, hard smile that she couldn't see. "I've done what I should have done a long time ago, Vanessa. I've protected what's mine. And I've given the authorities everything they need to prosecute you and your mother for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit fraud." "You can't do that," she shrieked, her voice cracking with hysteria. "We're family. You can't do this to family." "No," I said, my voice cold and hard as steel. "You're not family. You're vultures. You're parasites. And now, the whole world is going to know exactly what you did. Enjoy your time in prison." I hung up the phone and looked out the window of my hotel suite at the city below. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the skyline. It was a new day, a new beginning, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free. The documents were executed. The plan was complete. and justice had been served in the most satisfying way possible. Eleanor and Vanessa would face the consequences of their actions, and Daniel would have to live with the knowledge that he had lost everything because of his weakness. I picked up my phone one more time and sent a final message to my attorney. "It's done. Thank you for everything." His reply came almost instantly. "You earned it, Taylor. Go live your life," and that's exactly what I intended to do.